It was a busy week for the men and women of the Norwood Police Department, beginning with a major drug arrest and followed by 2 fatal accidents. First, Chief Brooks shares details on the drug arrest last Saturday on Washington Street.
What occurred in that case is that our detectives were looking into a subject who we believe was selling fentanyl in Norwood. And they established surveillance, knowing who they were looking for, having a vehicle description, having a sense for who the target was. And they enlisted the aid of patrol officers, Officers Shore and Sweeney, who set up on their radio cars in the area to back up the detectives. The detectives spotted the target in the neighborhood, placed him under surveillance. They followed him for a short distance, and when he came to a stop, the detectives and uniformed officers rolled up on him and approached him, engaged him in some conversation, and eventually seized narcotics. The subject that they stopped was a Victor Villafane. He's 37 years old. He lives in the Rosendale section of Boston. But they seized over 20 grams of fentanyl. That amount of fentanyl is twice as much as Massachusetts law requires for a minimum mandatory prison sentence. He was also carrying crack cocaine, and he was also carrying 3 different types of pharmaceuticals. We allege that all of those were intended for distribution. Mr. Villafane was cooperative when the detectives and officers rolled up on him. They placed him into custody. He was held at the Norwood Police Department all weekend and was arraigned in the Dedham District Court on Monday morning. We consider this a significant arrest. We believe Mr. Villafane was operating in the Norwood area and selling fentanyl to people who use narcotics here in Norwood. So my hat's off to the detectives, as well as to the uniformed officers that helped them out. The detectives were Detectives Lopes and Green, as I mentioned before, Officers Shore and Sweeney, and then their Sergeant McDonough were all involved in the arrest, and they did a great job.
Then, early Sunday morning, tragedy struck Norwood. For more on the car accident, we send it back to the chief.
Saturday night, or really Sunday morning at 3 a.m., our units responded with Norwood Fire Department to a crash that occurred on Walpole Street at the intersection of Davis Avenue. Investigation showed that a car went out of control and collided up there. There was a single vehicle collision. The operator of the car is a 23-year-old man, Treov Rensford. He was at the scene outside the car when we arrived. His brother, 22, Tresor, was still in the car, critically injured. The 22-year-old passenger later passed away. Treov was transported to the hospital for treatment and later transferred to a Boston hospital to a trauma center because he needed that level of care. We've since arrested him for operating under the influence, motor vehicle homicide by reason of operating under the influence, negligent operations, and then some other minor motor vehicle infractions. The case is being investigated by officers of the Norwood Police Department. We're being assisted by the Massachusetts State Police, and of course, where this is a fatality, the Norfolk District Attorney's Office is heavily involved in the investigation. But those are the charges. Mr. Rensford was arraigned Monday, and Dedham District Court bail was set at the time, and he'll go to trial at some point down the road.
The busy week continued for the police department on Tuesday morning. A Norwood man was struck and killed by an outbound commuter rail train at Norwood Depot. Let's go to Chief Brooks for the details of the accident.
I'm Chief Bill Brooks of the Norwood Police Department. We're here at the Depot train station where unfortunately a man was struck and killed this morning by a train that was going outbound from the city. Apparently he was crossing the tracks when he was struck, but of course we're in the very early stages of the investigation, and we're looking for witnesses who may have seen something to come forward and talk to us. These matters are always investigated jointly by the Norwood Police Department and by the Transit Police and the Office of the Norfolk District Attorney. So those agencies are here now. The trains have been shut down in both directions. They are just now opening up. The MBTA is sending an inbound train that will be moving through here in the next couple of minutes, but Railroad Ave continues to be shut down, and the outbound track is still shut down for now, but again, we expect that to open soon.